Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion. Once again, Omar Khadr is back in the news. The last time we heard about him was a couple months ago, and this was concerning his $10.5 million payout that the government gave to him. And for anybody who doesn't know, Omar Khadr is a Canadian citizen who ended up at the beginning of the Afghanistan war. Him and several of his family members went over to Afghanistan to fight for the Taliban. And during one battle in 2003, a American medic was killed by a grenade, and everyone believes that Omar Khadr was the one who did it. Him and his brother were captured and sent to Guantanamo Bay prison. While in Guantanamo Bay, he ended up, we've heard the story of him in Guantanamo's. We hear about the torture that ends up happening. But while he was there, he ended up admitting that he killed the medic. A lot of people are questioning this, saying that it was a confession made under duress, under torture, and those cannot be reliable because you'll tell your torturer whatever they want to hear just in order to make it stop. So a few years ago, he ended up getting released from Guantanamo Bay, and he got repatriated into Canada. And then his lawsuit began against the Canadian government. Yeah, right after they got him out of Guantanamo Bay. But he alleged that the Canadian government knew and allowed the torture, the enhanced interrogation that he received in Guantanamo Bay. Well, it didn't actually go to court. What ended up happening is Justin Trudeau ended up paying him out $10.5 million because he claimed that if they went to court and lost, it could cost the Canadian taxpayers up to $40 million. Yeah, well, I think that if it actually gone to court, Omar Khadr would not have gotten nearly as much. I don't think he would have gotten $10.5 million, let alone 40. I think this would have fallen through because many people disagreed with the Omar Khadr payout. It was very unpopular among Canadians. I don't really know how much it affected Trudeau's polls, but... So I don't think it would have gone through if it went to court. So to sum it all up, Omar Khadr went over to Afghanistan, killed an American soldier, spent some time in Guantanamo Bay, and then now is a millionaire and will see more money than you or I probably ever will. So he came back in the news at the end of August, beginning of September, because he was making this bail request in order that he wanted free access to the internet, and also he wanted to be able to associate with his sister without anybody present. Right now he currently needs supervision whenever he talks to his sister. So let's take a look and get all the details. So former Guantanamo detainee Omar Khadr's application to have unsupervised visit with his sister was denied by an Edmonton courtroom on Friday. Access to Zainab Khadr was one of the number of bail conditions the former U.S. prisoner who now lives in Edmonton had hoped the court would ease up to give him more personal freedoms. And you say, why? Why can't he just see his sister? What's the big deal about that? What's wrong with seeing your family? Well, Zainab Khadr, who, according to her brother's lawyers, live in the Middle East, has in the past expressed support for Al-Qaeda. Yeah, it turns out that Zainab Khadr is not exactly a nice person. What I find most ironic is that she's not a nice person, partly because of her dedication to her religion, and she's not even a very good Muslim. So let's take a little bit of a look into Omar Khadr's sister, Zainab Khadr. So this article was from, back in August 29th, so a few weeks ago. And it's Khadr's sister's less than liberal online post, a telling sign. Zainab Khadr sure has a sense of timing. It was on Monday, a couple weeks ago, that Canadians were reading about her brother Omar's request to have his bail conditions changed so he could have unrestricted access to hang on with his big sis. And it was Monday that Zainab took to Facebook to share this stern edict toward members of the Ummah. You think it's going to be peace and love? Quote, all sects of all sects of Islam have agreed unanimously that homosexual acts are a sin. Hijab is mandatory. Imams must be men. End quote. That's a great start there, girl. You're doing fantastic so far. Quote, if you reject this, you are lying to yourself, and you are weak in the faith. Accept Islam for what it is, or leave our mosques. Well, that's not a very nice thing to say. And even the article pretty sums it up. That's pretty stern stuff. Follow this harsh form of Islam or leave the religion. Quite the ultimatum. Why would she do this on the day that her brother is trying to ask for access to her? Unrestricted access? This is literally the worst thing you can do. I'd like to see my sister. Well, we've heard your sister supports Al-Qaeda. Nah, she's changed. Fuck. And I mean, nobody can deny it. These are radical ideas that she wants. These are part of the radical Islamic ideology that people should oppose. And from what I can tell, this is mostly seems to be unanimous throughout the Khadr family. They have a lot of ties to, well, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. You know what, let's take a little bit of a closer look into her family, because this is more about Zainab and the rest of the Khadr family, really, than it is about Omar. So, as we look into the Khadr family, we've already begun with Zainab. Might as well continue with her. And then we'll move on to the fathers and the brothers. So Zainab is actually the eldest of all the Khadr family. She is an Egyptian-Canadian citizen. And she too has been suspected of being a terrorist and an Al-Qaeda member. And at least you can definitely guarantee through her words that she's an Al-Qaeda supporter. So it says here that Zainab, with her family, she grew up in Pakistan and Canada as they frequently traveled back and forth. Pakistan has a big history of having radical Islam groups there. Al-Qaeda, Taliban. Following a severe 1992 injury that left her father disabled, Zainab became a second mother to the younger children and family. She was married and divorced 3 times and has a daughter from her second marriage. So remember when I was going back and saying that she ain't exactly the best Muslim? Well, are you not supposed to stay with your husband? But you're on your 3rd marriage, been divorced twice? Now, Zainab. That's not being faithful to your husband. And besides, if you're not faithful to your husband, he's got a few more wives who are more faithful than you, so you will just be left out. No orgy for Zainab. She and her widowed mother returned to Canada in February 2005. That's because a couple of years previous, her father had been killed in a shootout. And you know who were his allies? Who he was fighting with? He was fighting with Al-Qaeda and Taliban members. Literally the people we were fighting against. You know, the people that we said we need to go in and stop. You know, allied with the person who did 9/11. That sort of thing. While she was there, she fought for her family members' legal rights to remain there. I don't really blame the Canadian government for trying to get rid of them or revoke their citizenship, because at that moment, just remember, you had a daughter coming in who is accused, who is at least suspected of being an Al-Qaeda member, at least, very least a supporter. She's part of a family that went over where her father and 2 of her brothers fought against her country. I mean, she's a dual citizenship, Egypt and Canada, but they're literally fighting against one of her countries she's a citizen of. So yeah, I don't really blame the Canadian government for trying to deport you and take away your citizenship after that. You know what? Maybe they didn't try hard enough. So we stated earlier, she's on her third marriage. So what happened with these other two men that she was married to? In July 1995, her father arranged for the 15-year-old Zainab to marry Khalid Abdullah, an Egyptian, in December. Her mother began preparing an apartment for the couple in the family house in Pakistan. She was 15 at the time, and they were going to marry her off. On November 19th, 1995, Ayman al-Zawahiri bombed the Egyptian embassy in Pakistan. Named as one of the conspirators, Zainab's fiancé Abdullah went into hiding. So her old husband was also accused of being a terrorist. This is just a terrorist fucking spider web right here, this family tree. When the police arrived 8 days later to arrest her father on suspicion of involvement, Zainab grabbed his rifle and screamed at them while her mother barricaded the door. I love my father, but holy shit, if he did a bombing and killed people at an embassy, I would not be grabbing a gun to defend him or barricading the door. That is fucking a dangerous man. In October 1997, Abdullah resurfaced in Tehran and contacted the Khadr family and rescheduled the wedding. Khadr agreed to take his family on a long vacation. That would be Ahmed Khadr, their father, which they ended in Iran. They said farewell to Zainab, by then reluctant, as she started a new life with Abdullah. 6 months after the couple began living in a rented Tehran apartment, Abdullah phoned his father-in-law to report that Zainab was inconsolable at being separated from her family. The marriage was not working out, and Zainab returned to live with her family. One down. In 1999, Zainab was introduced to Yaqub al-Bayr, a Yemeni who had fought in Bosnia. He was better known as a wedding singer in Kabul, Afghanistan. Her father asked the boys of the family to vote on whether they should have his consent, whether he should give his consent for the marriage, and did so after they said yes. The wedding was in Kabul. Both al-Zawahiri and Osama bin Laden attended. Yeah, because his father happened to know Osama bin Laden personally, and I'm pretty sure, going back to Omar Khadr for a second, that I'm pretty sure Omar Khadr had met Osama bin Laden. So this is how tightly woven the family is with this terrorist organization, with the people who did 9/11. Zainab later explained that nobody was individually invited, and that word of mouth informed interest parties about the open invitation to their upcoming wedding. So, yeah, Osama bin Laden ain't just walking into anybody's wedding. And personally, I just went through a wedding, and while some of it we did leave a little more open to people, we gave specific people and asked them to come. So I don't believe this for a second that it was all open and he just, oh, you know what? I think I'll just show up. Because he obviously is connected to your family if he's showing up to your wedding. And if he's not, maybe you should question why a well-known, well-wanted fucking terrorist leader is at your wedding. Because if a known terrorist leader showed up at my wedding, one of the most wanted men in the world at that time, I think I might notice and ask a couple questions. The following year, Zainab and her mother returned to Canada for several months late in her pregnancy, where she gave birth to her daughter named Safia. When she returned to introduce her child to Rabia Hutchinson, Zainab was advised to take her daughter to a doctor. Sophia was diagnosed with hydrocephalus and required surgery, which Zainab decided would be better performed in Canadian hospital. Her and her husband disagreed, which he insisted on hospital in Lahore. And when Zainab insisted on taking her daughter to Canada, al-Bahir separated from her and left the household permanently. You're supposed to be faithful to your husband, Zainab, and let him make the decisions. Now, personally, you made the right decision by taking your son back to the first world for medical care. You did the very right thing. That was the good decision. But technically, you're going against your husband on this because you're supposed to remain faithful to him. That's not being faithful. It's your kid. I get it. No hate on getting the best health care for your kid. But just saying, for what you were saying earlier, for all people about following Islam, apparently you're not doing such a good job right now. Yeah. And in late 2001, Omar Khadr encountered al-Bahir in Kabul. He advised him that he should either return to his wife and daughter or consent to a divorce. After receiving written assurance that from Zainab that she would not seek any form of restitution, al-Bahir agreed to a formal divorce. So she ain't really a very good Muslim, as you can see right here. I mean, you're going against your creed, some of the main core tenets, family life, by doing that. Divorced twice? Not very good for a religious person, especially for somebody who takes it so seriously. And then, if we look into the rest of them, they're not quite as they don't have as much as Omar Khadr or Zainab, but their father, Ahmed Saeed Khadr, was Egyptian citizen. He lived in Canada before working in Afghanistan. There he has ties to a number of militant and mujahideen leaders in Afghanistan, including Osama bin Laden, founder of Al-Qaeda. Ahmed Khadr was accused by Canada and the United States of being a senior associate and financier of Al-Qaeda.
You seem nervous. Are you worried about meeting Padma's family?
Yeah. Well, that and this is always what it looks like on Homeland right before there's a drone strike.
And his brother... Ahmed's son and Omar's brother, Abdullah Khadr, was also somebody who bought arms for Al-Qaeda, although he said it was because he was on friendly terms with the people in there. You're still buying fucking guns for a terrorist group? If I got a friend in the fucking, I don't know, some biker gang, and he wants me to get him weapons because for some reason he can't get it himself, I'm not going to get him fucking weapons. That immediately makes you accessible to the crime. And when the crime is international terrorism, you'll be lucky if the Americans don't send a goddamn drone over your fucking house. And usually it ain't just you that dies in a drone strike. It's everybody around you. These people, why are they not thinking about this shit? Especially for where they are. If they're buying weapons, they're probably not in America, not in Canada. They're somewhere in the Middle East doing that. So where do you think all the fucking drones are dropping all the fucking bombs? So this is why the Edmonton court refused Khadr to be able to see his sister. She's the most direct link to his family, and she's just as bad as the rest of them, and is probably still in thick with Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, just terrorist organizations and radical Islamic ideologies. So they made a very good decision by not letting Khadr see his sister. So Nathan Whitling, who is the lawyer for Omar Khadr, described the restrictions on his client as quote-unquote onerous, which pretty much means a burden. It's a burden, these ones. Yes, we tend to put this kind of burden on known criminals. How dare we? Yes, it's so burdenous that he cannot speak to his radicalized sister. A pox on this household. Who did this? Justice June Ross, how dare she? So after the trial, once it was denied that he could speak to his sister, his lawyer spoke to the press and ended up saying, quote, he ended up speaking about Khadr and said, quote, he does want to be able to contact his sisters, and he doesn't see how he's going to be able to speak to his nieces or nephews without having some sort of supervisor present at the time, end quote. That's to prevent previous terrorist uncle from radicalizing the fucking kids, although it doesn't seem to matter when their mother is just as bad. I mean, a lot of this that Khadr wanted is really understandable why he doesn't have it. I mean, let's look into the three things he really wanted in this situation were contact with his sister, free internet access, and he wanted his travel restrictions softened. So right now he's living in Alberta, and he can't leave Alberta without authorization. He wants to be able to move freely throughout the country. So we're not going to give you unsupervised contact with your sister because she's radicalized, you're radicalized, you've committed acts of violence in the past, and she's proven she's willing to commit acts of violence in the past. So it's very easy, even if Khadr says now that he's no longer radicalized, it's very easy to get pulled back in when your whole family's part of the radicalization. You don't get to travel wherever you want within the country because you're a known terrorist. So, no, you don't get just to go wherever where, you could possibly do something. You're still a possibility, even if you're out on bail. He did, however, was given free access, unlimited access to the internet. Not unlimited. He has to stay away from anything to do with terrorism. I would still like to see more censorship on his internet, to be honest, considering his past. However, at least they're saying, stay away from terrorist activity. If you do, you're fucking done. So, you know what? That's not that terrible, actually. I still wish it was a little bit more severe, but I can live with that. And personally, just when you look at the whole family history, it's very hard just to make the whole he was a child soldier argument, like strictly make that, like, yes, he was a child soldier. He was 15 when he was fighting and got captured. But we can look from the other non-violent members of his family that they hold the same radicalized views as him. Or he alleges that he no longer has these, but I'm not going to take Omar Khadr at face value. And what would be Zainab's excuse? Is she a child soldier? Would she be considered a child soldier? I don't think so. She didn't go fight in any wars, yet she holds the same radicalized view and is prepared to commit acts of violence. Police were coming to get her daddy, and she had a gun, ready to kill him. She would have been a child at the time. Would you say that's a child soldier? No, she wasn't put in a battlefield. It's just plenty of children are caught in similar situations where the police come to take their dad away for committing a crime. And a lot of times it can be a violent crime. It might even be murder. You don't see these children grabbing a gun to defend their father and trying to barricade the doors. This is not normal child activity. This comes from a radical ideology. This is why they hold this belief. Omar Khadr didn't just do what he did because he was forced into it. He held these beliefs because it was something he was taught from birth. These radicalized ideas. These violent ideas. Omar Khadr is really asking for a lot from the Canadian government and the Canadian citizens, considering what he's done, what his family has done, and who they are, and the beliefs they hold. He's demanding a fucking lot from us. $10.5 million? Unrestricted access to his radicalized sister and being able to move across the country whenever you want? These are freedoms given to free citizens. Citizens who follow the law. Criminals who break the law get thrown into jail, and those freedoms are taken away. Not all of them, of course. We can't take away all of people's freedoms, but definitely their freedoms are restricted. Freedom of mobility? There's no freedom of mobility in prison. They'll give you freedom of mobility around your jail cell. That's it. And a little bit in the courtyard and wherever they tell you to go. That's it. Your freedom to speech? Yeah, not really. You don't get to go up to the guard and say fuck you and nothing happens. No, you're being reintegrated into society. So he's just asking a lot, and to me, he is not given a lot as a Canadian citizen. I get the feeling that in Omar Khadr's head, he believes that every Canadian who crosses his path should speak to him like this.
And I will always love you.
Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. I'm Adrian Lloyd, and this is just my stupid opinion. I'll see you soon.
You profit from fear and hate.